He who goes to equity must go with clean hands. If you are going to equity, you must go with clean hands. Faced with elections, illegitimacy and legitimacy problem in Nigeria, with Boko Haram insurgency in the northern part of the country that encroached to the northern part of Cameroon and has consumed thousands of lives and destructions of properties. As far as insecurity is concerned, Boko Haram insurgency is concerned, and has destabilized the Sahel region, also faced with banditry in some key states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not leaving out the fuel subsidies crisis that is taking a new normal and making the common man in Nigeria to bleed and force many persons to trek and abandon their cars, and also with threat of the insecurity from the indigenous people of Biafra, which is clear that there could be an armed conflict in Nigeria. We have already started witnessing some armed attack within the nation, and faced with also prison breaks like it was in Imo State and other states in Nigeria. Also faced with the issue of electricity crisis, and also the increase in poverty and level of unemployment in Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, chairperson of Ecowas, seemed to be trying to move the grain of sand in the eye of his fellow colleague than the debris of death in the eyes of Nigeria, which I just made mention. In a religious manner, it is stated that he's trying to cry more than the bereaved. In fact, you cannot cry more than someone who is bereaved, because only he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. There have been many schools of thought with a 7 days ultimatum given by the Ecowas chairperson and the Ecowas about the coup leader in Niger to drop the aspiration and reinstate the President Bazoum, who was deposed just last week. And today, Sunday, will make the 7-day ultimatum given by the Ecowas chairperson. Tinubu, in his first election as a chairperson of Ecowas, was very clear in his message when they met. And his message when they met is that the Ecowas will not tolerate any military coup in the country. And when he made that speech, a lot of political analysts were quick to make mention that Tinubu was warning his own military, looking at the fact and the evidences surrounding his election, that many are questioning that Tinubu is afraid that when the judicial process must be completed or is completed, he could face a situation of stepping down by force from military, and that's why he had to send a strong warning that military takeover will not be tolerated in ECOWAS. However, it is clear that coup is not only at the level of military. We have had civilian coup. In fact, civilian coup happens to be the main function or the push factor of a military coup. Let me break down in this editorial. When the Constitution is stated that an election is supposed to be conducted following A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and that no manner of breaching of any of these A, B, C, right to D will be tolerated or will be deemed constitutional. And when that is breached, it becomes a coup d'etat against the Constitution. The Constitution remains the supreme authority of the state. Fear no persons, no individual, and everybody must abide by the Constitution. This is one aspect. Also, the Constitution is very clear that there should be a particular term limit of particular state and head of state. If it is a 2-term limit, once that is violated deliberately or indeliberately, thwarted to meet the aspiration of someone who have decided to stay in power, it is a coup d'etat, and state and common community of nations must also give that same punishment that they are giving to military takeover. Let us also come to promises that are being made by politicians. When politicians make promises that they will deliver the aspiration of the people. They will give electricity, which 60 years after most African nations regain their independence, electricity supply is still a luxury. Road network is still a luxury. Good hospital is still a luxury. All these things are still luxury. In fact, unemployment is still an issue to be fought. When all this happens, when these promises are not respected, in all fairness, it is a coup d'etat against the people. It is a coup d'etat against the same people who voted for you, because those are promises made and those are promises not respected. When we narrow all these down, the issue about the Niger and Ecowas giving 7 days ultimatum, many have been quick to say that Ecowas rushed in their decision. We have not forgotten about what happened in Libya. In fact, we are seemingly watching the replay of what happened in Libya. Libya was a stable nation, prosperous nation, where most of Libyans could not pay their services of electricity bill, water services, and also maternity issues were being taken care by the government of Libya under late Colonel Mohammed Gaddafi. The economy of Libya became stable. Soon after the Lockerbie bombing and isolation of Libya, Libya became an El Dorado in Africa. What happened? There was an invasion that the people wanted him out, backed by the West, and NATO under the French government was quick to impose a no-fly zone and started the bombardment. And arms were given to Libyans to send away Gaddafi, whom they say was a dictator and was not leading the country into the right direction. We are witnessing what is happening in Libya. President Donald Trump, in one of his outings, said Libya is a Harvard of terrorism. And that is true. Libya is more destabilized than before. ECOWAS has promised a military intervention. If their 7 days ultimatum comes to an end, will ECOWAS want to plunge a sub-regional area into a humanitarian crisis? And let it also be clear that when arms are given out, that area will never be the same as it is. If you doubt me, look at what is happening in Libya. Look at what is happening in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon. Look at what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Look at what is happening currently in Nigeria with the high level of insecurity that was caused by the Nigerian Biafra Civil War in 1967 between Ojukwu and Gowon. And also go to what is happening in Ethiopia in the Amhara region. Go to what is happening in Sudan currently, where there is an armed conflict in Sudan. I have not heard ECOWAS talked about military intervention in Sudan. As far as Sudan is concerned, I have not also heard ECOWAS talking about what has happened in Burkina Faso, what has happened in Mali, what has happened in other nations. And Tinubu spearheading this, is clear that there could be a hidden agenda about this. Perhaps he's trying to give away and make the judiciary to give him powers, because it is clear in Nigeria's constitution that when the nation is at war, the president remains supreme and the constitution is suppressed for the presidential power to fully take over. And we are expecting judgment to be out, and with many fingers pointing that Tinubu may be sent out, but there is a call for concern. This is House of Commons with me, Tah Mai Jarvis. Here in the studio, we have our panelists, as usual, who have joined us. But before then, I want to wish you a very happy birthday to you. A very happy birthday to you, Grace Mofonaya. Grace Mofonaya, happy birthday to you as you celebrate your birthday in the United States of America. I want to say that may the good God continue to guide you and bless you, Grace Naya Mufo. Happy birthday to you, and may the showers of blessings of the Almighty God continue to rain. We have Nick Anu, who is here with us. We also have Mr. Ignatius, who is also here. We have Mr. Ngalim, who is here. We have Mr. Vitalis Kimba, who is here. Happy Sunday to you, Nick Anu, and thanks for joining us.
Happy Sunday to you, Tah Mai Jarvis. Thanks for having me. Also, happy Sunday to our fellow panelists, and happy Sunday to all the viewers of my media Prime House of Common all over the world. Thank you.
And also, happy Sunday to you, Mr. Ignatius.
Happy Sunday, Jarvis. Happy Sunday to all the televiewers of my media Prime. I wish to thank those who have taken their precious time to watch this program. which is very, very educative and which touches the most what happens in our daily lives. And I want to thank them and also say happy Sunday, and happy Sunday to my fellow panelists once more.
Mr. Ngalim, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, Jarvis, and thanks once more for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. And to my co-panelists, I'll say happy Sunday to everyone. And to our televiewers, I wish you a splendid Sunday.
And also, Mr. Kimbang, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, Mr. Jarvis. Happy Sunday to all the televiewers. I'm so happy to be here today. So at least to talk about what is really troubling us in Africa. I think that by the end of the day, we'll touch many things that's really bothering, especially the youth of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I begin with you, Mr. Ignatius. We are witnessing this issue which is happening in Niger. Ecowas gave 1 week ultimatum to Niger, to the coup leaders, and today, Sunday, is 1 week. We are talking about midnight. And they say if that is not done, their demands are not met, they will issue a military decision. And when we look at the sub-region, we are talking about ECAS sub-region that involves part of Semak in it. ECAS, for example, Niger is bordered to Nigeria, also bordered to Chad, bordered somehow to Cameroon, because if you look at the geopolitical zone, and if there is an armed insurgency or there is a military intervention, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and some other leaders, even Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in his outing supported the coup leaders and said France is behaving like neo-colonialists, and so he said the Nigerian military, they are on the right track. When you see a head of state backing that kind of situation, what picture can we have, and what will be the consequence of this if that military intervention is done? Will Cameroon not be affected?
This military intervention you are talking about, I'm afraid it is going to create a new era in Africa where we are going to see a wind of change, which we have been expecting. But with the military intervention, what I see is chaos will come in, because the countries that have indicated support to Niger, we have not seen all the countries. There are still countries that we might see them only when the action is taken. But beside that, I want to bring in my own feelings. A reggae singer said that crying does not pay, and crying will not pay. That was Bob Marley. Another one came in to say that emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Why am I saying this? I'm saying that we have been crying before independence, and after independence we are still crying. But this time around we have decided that we will not more cry. We are going to fight. Why am I saying this? Because what is happening in Niger, it is what we have been expecting, and we expect it to continue. Other countries will continue, because we have lived in a kind of a continent where we are like tenants, and this time we are not going to continue to be tenants. And I want to also make our leaders, who are really, some of them are still in power, to be very careful with the way they handle countries, because they have made it clear that they are not leaders for us, but they are leaders to worship people who are not our fathers nor uncles, let me say, for former colonial powers. Let me quote one example. When a cathedral got burnt in France,
Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame. I saw an African leader, Alpha Conde, who was very quick to come out and make a declaration calling on his African counterparts to show solidarity to France, in which I've been seeing things that have been happening in Africa. And people contributed. Nations contributed. Just before that incident in France, there was a flood that took place in the south of Africa. That was Mozambique, Malawi, yes, and part of Zimbabwe. And I did not see
Madagascar.
Yeah, I did not see any leader who came up to call others to show solidarity. We mean that our leaders hate us. And when somebody like these leaders, these military leaders in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are coming up like new liberators, and they should understand that Africa is behind them, because just in those countries the citizens are behind those military coup leaders. It is not something that we are seeing.
So I see of people celebrating.
People are celebrating, so you cannot be talking in the place of other people. The Nigerian president is just trying to defend himself as the leader of Ecowas, because normally sometimes as a leader you don't need to become radical. He's just trying to defend his post as the leader of Ecowas. But we have to understand that I take this one as a new era. This is another wind of change that is going to blow. I'm saying it will blow across Africa, because other countries will follow. There were some those figures that came up in Nigeria concerning uranium and build the relationship between uranium and France. That's the real coup d'etat. Somebody cannot cook food and the person will eat one tenth of the food, and you take 9/10. That's instead the real coup d'etat. What we are seeing here, these are liberators and not coup d'etat. So in a military intervention like Nigeria is promised is going to cause confusion in Africa, because that military, if ECOWAS react, I'm seeing other countries that will intervene, and this is going, that war always have negative consequences. They should be very careful. They should listen to the people of Niger, because it's now this is a third country, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Those people are not complaining. If they are not complaining, they are happy with their leader. So we cannot cry. You cannot cry more than they believe. Just like your Jarvis was in the introduction, he says you use a statement that you cannot cry more than they believe. The people of Niger are not crying. Why should we cry more than them? So that's my own view of a point when it concerns issues like that. I've not seen. It's not ECOWAS only. It's not ECOWAS alone. We also have CEMAC. We have other economic zone. I expected them to react in issues that are disturbing a certain African country. Like when we see a country like Central African Republic and the Democratic Republic of Congo, these are countries that have never been at peace since they are independent. They are always at war. I expected these economic groups always to intervene, even though CEMAC tried one time to intervene in Central African Republic before the current president came to power. The person who took power there, CEMAC trying to intervene, yes.
Ngalim, the president who is under captivity, the deposed president, has called on the international community to free him and restore him as president of that country. And we know that if that is done, it will be done on the blood of people. When you look at what Chairman John Fundi did in 1990, when he won 1992, when it was alleged that he won the election, and many people wanted him to move to the street and to cause chaos for the president who is currently in power now to give him the position. But he said he will not walk to the unity palace on the blood of people. But what you see now currently, this president in Niger, who is deposed, is calling for military intervention. Is there not a mix-up somewhere? Is it power hungry or interest first of the nation?
I don't know what makes Mohamed Bazoum to think that he's indispensable in Niger. I don't know what gives him the effrontery to call for war in Niger. He needs to understand that the interest of the nation comes first.
Like Fundi did in 1992.
Yeah, it is not about him being a leader. He's been there. One thing they fail to understand is if the citizens rise up and react against a leader, they are decrying certain shortcomings in the process of governance. It's a totalitarian kind of regime, and that is what the people are fighting against. It's been the same thing all over Africa, and I think Africans are just awakening to the reality. The co-panelists mentioned the fact that there's something like an economic coup d'etat, where you have a nation, founded on resources, and a country takes 90% of the resources, or 94% leaving the country.
French has no gold, but they are currently one of the top in gold reserves.
The highest reservoirs of gold in the world, but they have no gold mine. It's just to tell you, if military leaders or young military leaders are taking over their countries in Africa, it's because they can no longer stand the economic coup d'etat that Africa is going through. we cannot develop. We have the poorest road networks in the world. Why? But all the tar that is used in tarring roads leaves from Africa and goes to other parts. And it has been a long cry since what we called independence. I don't know if we've ever had any independence, but it has been a very long cry since the time, because we still continue to live under the terms of the Pact for the Continuation of Colonialism, which leaves us even in a worse position. It becomes easier for you if someone comes to your home who is under captivity at the moment, but they are just scared that this wind of change that is blowing across Africa will reach them sooner or later, because all of them are guilty of one thing: constitutional coup d'etats. They're shouting out, they're scared about these coup d'etats that are going across Africa because they are guilty of the same crime. When the citizens rise up, they rise up because someone who is in government has committed a constitutional or has carried out a constitutional coup d'etat. And for all these countries, beginning, even if you go to Burkina Faso, right from Sankara, Compaoré, right up to the present Traoré, yes, right up to the present man, you will realize that that country has gone through a series of coup d'etats, at least 5 of the coup d'etats. Why? Because when one person comes to power, he believes himself indispensable to the progress of the nation. But that is the first thing that we need to keep aside. If the constitution says, okay, 2 terms of office, non-renewable, the leaders of Africa need to realize that any form of manipulation of the constitution in order to prolong your stay in power, it's already a coup d'etat in itself. And the presidents of Ecowas, the Ecowas zone, I think it's high time they realize that the will of the people is what keeps them in power. And once they fail in their duties, once they cannot satisfy the people who put them in positions of authority, it would be a heinous crime for them to believe that they can invite their friendly nations to contribute military and send to keep them in power. The issue with Niger, as we are talking right now, if the leaders of ECOWAS decide to send a constituted military body to Niger, I think they are just putting themselves or defining themselves as the worst insecurity that Africa could ever face.
Okay. Nick, before then, let me take on this message. It says, Dear House of Commons, I think someone should say something on the numerous crises and military interventions in Africa. I support Nigeria to take the lead, as well as South Africa. No country is an island. Politics must be for all and for the interests of all ECOWAS. It is our military police. ECOWAS is our military police in Africa, sovereign from Bok Group. This other right, it says, Good afternoon, Jarvis. Extend my greetings to Mr. Vitalis. I am Tah Felix in Bamenda. Maybe I stop there for now. He said something that these presidents are trying to protect their own. Now, do you see ECOWAS? And he said also that they are guilty. The reason why they are trying to intervene is because they seem to be guilty of the same crime. Because Traoré in Russia asked one simple question that this generation is asking: why is it that with all what Africa have, Africa has not been able to go beyond the poverty line? And will you want to confirm that the ECOWAS, as well as other some of these regional bodies, are more clubs trying to protect their own rather than working for the interests of the people?
Yeah, actually they are not like working for the interests of the people. If you look within ECOWAS, you see that there's a high hand of the French in the governance of ECOWAS. If we go right back to when ECOWAS as an economic zone wanted to come out with their own currency and called the ECO, you see that it was masterminded and swept behind the carpet through the influence of the French, through the action of Alassane Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire, and that project was put on a hold. because they saw that with the coming of the ECO in that economic zone, the French franc or the franc CFA in that zone is going to die down, and they are going to lose their grip and or their interest in that region. So in West Africa, we had this strong influence of France that they are gradually losing today. We still have some of the countries that are still strong there, like Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, that the French are still using to manipulate what happens within ECOWAS. I don't really see the military intervention of ECOWAS taking place in Niger. Yeah, I think just within this week they kind of like backtrack and they're trying to like use diplomacy to solve that. Obviously they could not. I don't see them using military intervention, because to me that military intervention was, if you look at it critically, it was masterminded by the French. They are kind of working from behind stage to use Africans, so that it should be like that. It is Africans attacking Africans.
Yeah, because
and
so Tony Blinken, U.S. Secretary General, says they will back ECOWAS. And the French are also saying they back ECOWAS. But what is contradictory here is that the first elected president, someone who has been elected president, who is a president, the first president, let me put it that way, to support this coup is the president of Russia, of Syria, Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, saying that the Nigerians have the right to drive out France.
Obviously, because all of these guys are, if you look at the Turkish, before to really understand this, the concept of all these coup d'etats that are taking place within West Africa, it's good to understand how the political scene internationally is taking place. If you look at before the Cold War, the war was, or during the Cold War, the war was a kind of bipolar war, where you had USSR and then you had the West. The West backed by America and the European nations. So the West succeeded to fool the Russians to dissolve the USSR, and the West now became a kind of unipolar. And over the time, if you study the coming of Putin to power, Putin, his agenda has been to make Russia great again, and he succeeded to do that, to make Russia. And then his agenda is that he is accusing the West of saying that the West is plundering the resources of Africa to build their economies, to buy ammunition, to fight him, and then in order to destroy him, as they're trying to destroy him through Ukraine. And Putin is saying that he's going to fight now the West through where their resources are coming from. That's why he's supporting most of these young military guys to kick away French interests, like they have done in Mali, they have done in Burkina Faso, Guinea, and the rest, through their Wagner group. If you look at it critically, the Wagner group is part of the Russian military.
And the Niger have called, insurgents have called for the Wagner group to come to their aid. And the Wagner group was the first body to say, we support the coup d'etat.
Yeah, and they are already there. If you look at it, the Wagner group is already infiltrated in most of these countries. They are in Central Africa, they are in Sudan, they are in Mali, they are in all of these countries. So the agenda of Putin is that they want to kick away French interests, so that, and the Western interests, so that they don't come to Africa and plunder our resources, build their military arsenal, come fight him. The agenda is that they want to make the war to be a just war, even though the war can hardly ever be just. They want to make a war to be multipolar, which is a good agenda for Africa, and it is high time African leaders position themselves. We don't always need to be at the receiving end. We also can have a say in world politics, and the agenda of Putin is highly welcome, and Africans is highly welcome by me and many young Africans. Yes, the idea of a multipolar world.
Everybody share that same.
The world cannot continue to be bipolar or unipolar as the West they are trying to do. Western civilization has dominated the world for so long, more than 500 years, and it is high time they know that they cannot be there forever. They are not eternal. And the military intervention in Niger, I don't see it happening. It can never happen.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm very sure about that. It cannot happen.
Our military are already stationed in the northern part of Niger, the northern part border to Niger.
If you look at the stakes, the Nigerian government or the Nigerian people cannot risk
accepting Tinubu to lead a war, or to lead troops to go fight in Niger, because of the after effect of that war. There's Boko Haram, they are not even yet able to contend. There's Boko Haram there's Biafra agitation now. Even on Monday, they have their own ghost towns on Monday. So it is something that it's a call for concern.
All those of you watching us on Facebook, we want to say happy Sunday to you. Those of you watching us on our YouTube channel, Gilberto Salu, happy Sunday to you. He says, same as Mr. Bia carried out unconstitutional coup to stay in power for life. Happy Sunday to you, Gilberto. Happy Sunday to you, Mickey Mike. Please, Mr. Jarvis, don't compare what is happening in Niger to that of what is happening in Cameroon. Moi Blair says, good afternoon, Mr. Tah Mai Jarvis, and to all the members of the panel. It is a wonderful topic. I have said this before and will still say it. The people of every country are the rightful sovereign of that country. If a political incident happens in a country, that incident can only survive if the sovereign, the people, approves it, whether outsiders like it or not. Just like the case of Russia at war with Ukraine, the majority of Russian people believe that trust Vladimir Putin, even against the backdrop of Western countries. So for Niger, it is same. The population of that country massively support the coup. The worst is that they violently support the coup, meaning that even military offensives, waged against the coup leaders, it is easy. They are outsiders. The country will never know peace, because only for the short while those military guys have been in office, they have opened the eyes of Nigerians that the main enemy is France, US, and Ecowas. They have succeeded to gain support from the people to use France, US, and Ecowas as the enemy, making them to constantly live in poverty. So these guys in the West should just chill and relax. Forcing a military action against the junta means that nobody put in power by them will ever be accepted by the masses. And Mark Amos Andy says, happy Sunday. This is exactly the question I want to ask you. Let's assume that there is a military intervention, like what has happened in Libya. Libya has never been the same again. In fact, Libya is a havoc of terrorism, human slavery, modern day slavery, a lot of issues. If this military intervention, because as we speak, the deadline is 12. What is CEMAC in itself doing in terms of if there is a possible intervention of the fallout? Because we have humanitarian crisis in CEMAC, Cameroon will be greatly affected.
Yes, Jarvis, before I come to it, let me give a summary of something. You know, when I learned that ECOWAS had come together so fast to attack Niger because of the military coup, I was very surprised. Because what we'd have to look for, you know, that the youth of Africa, they have become so frustrated, so much so that when somebody comes up with an agenda, no matter what, just to unseat the president, they look at that person like a messiah. We look at Africa critically. You see, the youth of Africa that have been dying in the Sahara Desert, that have been dying in the oceans, trying to cross to Europe. Why? Because there are no jobs in Africa, because they don't have hopes. If these ECOWAS leaders could listen to these youth, then quickly come together, just like what they want to do in Niger, and say, okay, what is happening that our youth are all dying in the ocean? What is happening that our youth are all dying in the Amazon forest in America? What happened that our youth are all dying in the desert and the Atlantic Ocean? If they could come together, then they say, okay, we are going to create jobs. We are going to create other facilities that can make the youth to be very comfortable. I think that will help solve the problem. But as far as they keep on only looking at themselves, because what is happening now with this military intervention is that it is as if they are going in to protect one of theirs. They're not going in for the population. Yeah, they're not going for the population. Because if you look at
a friend in need.
Yes, yes, because you know that if I don't support him, tomorrow will also happen to me. Reason being that many of them being in power today is not because they were voted into power. Like
what is currently happening in Nigeria.
Yes. They were not voted. If you look at the Nigerians are not happy with Tinubu because they know that we also it. Her elections were grossly rigged in Nigeria, and ECOWAS saw it, and they didn't do anything.
ECOWAS election was successful.
Yes, and once all these things happen, the youths they are very, very frustrated
But when you look at the setup of Africa, mostly you discover that those who hold power are very old people. And the youth, there seems to be, so if you are not, let's say, connected, you seem to be nowhere. And all this lead to what? Frustration. That is why Traore has to ask that their own generation cannot understand why Africa is so rich and in resources, but yet we are so poor. So that particular sentence alone send a lot of waves to African youth. It has awakened them. Why are we so poor?
And a lot of it took the internet by storm.
Yes.
And everybody was supporting.
Why should I be very poor? Why should I depend on France? France does, he's supposed to depend on me. Why should I depend on France? Because when you look at the way the leaders they have set up themselves, it is like France is pushing Ecowas from behind. Because I was listening to France and this morning. France is already declaring that they are ready to support Ecowas in the event where
military intervention.
Yes, military intervention. Yes.
But is that not what happened in Libya?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Because Africa should, the ECOWAS leaders should learn that in the event of any military intervention, that country is going to go backward for more than 50 years.
And even the sub-region,
The sub-region will be plunged into war. And if you look critically, there are more than 3,000 Nigerians who are living in Niger, who have escaped as refugees, escaped from Boko Haram and the rest, and they are living in Niger. You are not going to fight a war against Niger. When you are refugees, your people are there, 3,000 of them. You are not even looking for solutions to how you can repatriate these people. No. If you look at it critically, you always discover that Niger too has also been a hub where they have been combating the Al-Qaeda and the ISIS. And as these things is happening, these people are observing. Even the Boko Haram too are observing.
So the enemy of the enemy becomes a friend.
Yes. Even if you look to Nigeria, it's called that even the Biafrans are also waiting. Because they know that once the war will start in Niger, Nigerians will also, the Nigerian army will consider Niger, they will not come up. The Boko Haram will not come up. IC will not come up.
So so Nigeria is in a very difficult position.
Very difficult position, yes. And like what you said about the Nigerian constitution, Tinubu knows very well that he did not win the election. And so he wants power. He wants time to stay in power. That's why he's so interested in declaring war. But unfortunately, I listened to what the Nigerian Senate said this morning. They did not support him. They just say Nigeria and Ecowas, they should use diplomacy to see how they can solve the problem. But they say they condemn the coup d'etat in Niger.
Yeah, because for Nigeria to declare an outright war,
yes,
the Senate must approve.
Yeah, I listened to what the Senate said this morning. They said that they are not in favor of, that Tinubu did not ask them to visa his, yes, he asked for support from the Senate. So Senate said, we have looked at the crisis and they have discovered that they can only use diplomacy to solve the problem.
Briefly now, so I go to Mr. Ignatius. We are talking about possible military intervention. One would have been expecting, or we expect that CEMAC in itself will hold their own meeting to look at possibility of a crisis, of a refugee crisis or a spillover in this area where CEMAC has been kind of very quiet. But CEMAC borders ECOWAS. In fact, we're talking about ECAS. They are within the ECAS in itself, the ECAS.
The thing is that when you look at CEMAC 2 is not well, because most of the country in CEMAC zone, they do that. They are suffering from
yes.
If you look at our own in Cameroon, yes.
But with this military intervention, not even plunge the CEMAC region into more chaos than it is now.
It might plunge, but like what my friend said, I'm not sure that there will be any military intervention, because the consequences will be far-reaching, so much so that
we have the US that back the military, back the ECOWAS mission for possible military intervention.
And we look at Niger too. Niger too is waxing strong because he knows that Russia is going to back him. So at the end, it will become a Western war. Like
Ukraine.
Yeah, Ukraine.
Yes. So we have another proxy war.
Yes.
Ignatius statement. Assuming that there is a military takeover in Niger, let's say the military intervention is declared, because as we speak, the deadline is looming. It's 12 midnight today. Ecowas too will not want to act like they bark like a toothless bulldog, because it will be a slap in the Ecowas face to say there's no intervention. And let's look at history. Ecowas intervened in Liberia when we had the ECOMOG soldiers that were sent there for Charles Taylor, and they are relying that the experience they had in Charles Taylor in Liberia could still is the same experience they want to use, which means that ECOWAS will not want to show that they were slapped on the face or they made a wrong announcement about 7 days ultimatum. That's the first. And second, let's say they move now with their threat and with the military intervention. Ghana is seemingly backing down from military intervention within the ECOWAS sub-region. Let's say the President Bazoum takes over back. They remove the military junta, put President Bazoum. Are we not seeing that ECOWAS is giving birth to terrorism in the sub-region? Because a new president, another team now want to fight against this, and now Boko Haram, which the Niger military has been fighting, will now say, oh, the enemy of our enemy is our friend. Let's now team up and see how. Are we not in more chaos than what we are experiencing if this military takeover continues?
If only they succeed to take the military leader from power and bring back the former president. If only they succeed. That's why I'm using the statement, because I'm not seeing them succeeding. What they are doing is intimidation. You know, we have to understand that time changes. You know, that in the past, where we used to leaders used to fear most of this economic zone, the time has passed, because civilization time has changed to the level that Africa is seeing some realities that we did not know in the past. So now the consequence, if let's say that it happens like Jarvis is just saying, that this man is taken out of power, it means that we are now Niger will come to join Libya, Central African Republic, and even though Democratic Republic of Congo, their presidents, so many of them I cannot really say the way they function there. So taking back this man, taken out of power, is going to make them join these 4 countries. We mean that now in Africa we'll have Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Libya, because that country will never be at peace. But now I want to see things from the other side. I would like also to understand that we are understanding now that democracy has failed us in Africa completely, especially the youth. We are where we are today because of democracy. And these leaders in Africa, ECOWAS and CEMAC, they are like, I want to believe that our Cameroon politics, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, is going across the borders. These people will never like to see something bad happening to their counterpart, because they themselves are not clear. The way you take to come to power, if it is not clear, when you steal something from somebody and you keep it, you see another person stealing it from you, it will become difficult for you to make a noise, because it is instead going to make the secret, the public will know the secret. What am I saying? I'm trying to say that these leaders, what we are seeing today, their stay in power is the same the way they manage their country. You know that these our leaders are unable to control their ministers. For example, let me take Cameroon. If you want to take the money embezzled in Cameroon, I can estimate it as 1/4 of our budget.
When you say democracy has failed, what do you mean? Because Cameroon, the government will tell democracy has succeeded. That's why we keep having elections and elections and elections. And in Kenya, they will tell you they had successful election, and they will also tell you that the electoral body in 2017 by the chairperson of the Chief Justice David Maraga nullified the election of an incumbent, and also in 2022 also ruled against the outgoing backed candidate Raila Omele Odinga. And they will tell you that also in Nigeria have been electing their president, Ghana has been electing their president. Why is the democracy has failed in Africa? Under what context do you mean? Because even in Cameroon, they would say we have been having an election. In fact, in 2025, we still have another presidential election.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We have 54 countries in Africa. If you go across, you interview most of these presidents, everybody will tell you that I'm here because the people want me to be here. But when you go to this country, especially the democratic, those people who have come to power by democracy, by elections that we are saying here, in which, like the kind we are talking in Nigeria, you will see this country that embezzlement is very high. The level of embezzlement is very high because they themselves are unable to control their ministers. I was saying that, I wanted to say that in Cameroon, I can estimate the level of embezzlement, the budget that has been stolen. I can even estimate at 1/4 of our country budget. I'm saying that these leaders, the military leaders, are the only people who can bring in the stolen money. E.g., when you take a case of Burkina Faso, the military leader, they gave some time and just gave some time that if you know that you have stolen the country's money, just refund it. I want to tell you that the reaction that came from their leaders, those ministers and the other directors, the government coffers were full. I'm trying to say that give these military leaders like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, give the whole Africa just 10 years and bring others like this, those of these three countries. Africa will become rich because the stolen money will be brought back to the government coffers. We will not become poor. Our leaders are unable to control their leaders because the way they function with France, that is like their godfather. It is the same way they function with their leaders. So the only people who don't fear even the closest collaborator are military leaders.
Okay.
Yes, so that's what I'm trying to say that. So you see, ECOWAS and the other economic zone cannot support exactly what is happening in Burkina Faso. You see, some of us here are even, there are countries that are in like confused in this issue. You know that a country will not support let me take for example a country. There are leaders who are afraid that what has taken place in Niger, if it goes successfully, it is going to open the eyes of my own citizen.
Okay.
It might happen in my own country. And then secondly, he will also want that to support the ECOWAS, as you are saying. Another way is that when I support ECOWAS, it causes chaos there. It is still going to affect my country in another way. So this thing is being
in power.
Yeah, in power. So it is some of them are like in the middle. They don't really know. They don't come out clear.
Okay, let me take on the message before coming to Mr. Ngalim. Happy Sunday, House of Commons. We youth of Africa, we are going to fight till last man standing. What ECOWAS is doing is just a diplomatic language. No action is going to take place. That is the same thing they did to Mali. But as we speak now, they are fabricating tractors in Mali because they took the best move to kick out former French Kela Assimi Goïta. Assimi Goïta is the best. This is Rene watching from United Arab Emirates. This one right, he says, in applying Western diplomacy, let the leaders of ECOWAS not disregard the traditional African approach of resolving conflict, which is by dialogue and negotiation. It is said in Pidgin that nothing past arrangement. Any military intervention will lead to the death of the ousted president of Niger. It will be a much ado about nothing. Military intervention have never resolved any conflict. Instead, they have always made the situation worse. Typical example are the cases of Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. If the Sahel is unstable today, it is as a result of the military intervention in Libya. That result in the assassination of Colonel Mohammed Gaddafi. Let ECOWAS not be misled by the French and other countries who are after their interests in Niger to create situations which will put Niger and the whole Sahel into suffering. Tabe Kingsley watching from Yaoundé. This one right, he says, good afternoon to you all. What is happening in Niger is a perfect example of the people taking their destiny into their hands, and the same puppet in the name of ECOWAS want to buy their positions and room for more borrowing for their masters in the West. Many Africans are behind Niger. This one right, it says, happy Sunday, nice program. I think Niger should continue. And I come back to you, Ms. Ngalim. Ms. Ngalim, the Semak sub-region will be highly affected if there is a possible intervention, because we are talking about the Sahel. And when we look at the Sahel region, we are looking at the northern part of Cameroon, which already is suffering from insurgency. This is example. Niger military have been fighting against Boko Haram insurgency and ISIS. Niger military has taken over the presidency and stating that the president is not working and they want to enforce the law. Now, Ecowas is saying we want to remove this military that has been fighting against terrorists, which means that if we are removing this military, the military now will find a friend in the terrorists that they have been fighting. So possibly build an alliance, because your enemy of your enemy becomes your friend. So they will not be an alliance. Come back to Nigeria. As Mr. Tim Kimang said, Nigeria, if Nigeria goes to the war, Nigeria will have to deploy troops. Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali will also deploy troops to support Niger. The Wagner group is already in Niger. And so an attack of Niger, which is an independent state, will mean that Niger also should launch its rocket strikes in Nigeria. And so what are we looking for here? Why is it that CEMAC is quiet? Like nothing is happening. The head of state of CEMAC, they are quiet. We're expecting them to probably hold a meeting to look at possible way out. If there is this intervention, how can we do to safeguard our CEMAC sub-region? Are you surprised by the quietness and silence of CEMAC?
I'm not surprised. They have just decided to stay focused because their direction is head on. They know that if they intervene in this, they're going to create a chaos. What is happening is just that we Africans might not be seeing it from the same point of view. But if you watch some time ago, there was a meeting of European Union, maybe Association of States, and there was a presenter who said, what we do in Africa, we incite a chaos, we capitalize on it, and then we reap them of their resources. What is happening in the background? There is a gentle shift of the war front from Ukraine, where the world powers are fighting each other. They're simply trying to shift the war front to the Sahel region or to the Central African sub-region. And the reason for it is simple. France will not lose Niger just at the snap of a finger, because if you look at how wealthy they become from the resources of Niger, it's not something they will let go without a fight. And it's not surprising that France and America are vying support for ECOWAS to step into Niger. And if they do it, Russia is not going to sit on the other side and watch them do that quietly. And we as Africans must be able to realize that the insecurity that has been eating Africa up, what they call it, ISIS or Al-Qaeda or whatsoever.
Boko Haram.
The ISIS, Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram of Africa is France, the United States and the UN. And these groups have always existed because in order to reap Africa of its resources, they need to incite some insecurity. And then they step in claiming that they are coming to restore democracy. And in the course of it, you find things that happen like in Mali, the north of Mali, where there was a claim that some UN peacekeeping agents have been killed and coffins were being transported out of the place. And the military hit their hand on the table. And when they kicked open the coffins, it was resources, diamonds, gold, whatsoever. The purpose of these people coming into Africa is not to come and restore democracy. It's not to come and guarantee.
But we have been told that democracy is the issue why there will be a possible military intervention in Niger, and that the democratically elected government should be put in place. When you say democracy is not an issue, what do you mean?
Rather, democracy is a problem for Africa. Yes. Democracy, it's Africa's problem. Why? Because those we call democratically elected leaders are trained by the very enemies of Africa.
So what system now should be used? You and Mr.
If you look at history, if you look at history, Africa was very successfully managed under the kingship before the advent of colonialism. There is no lie about that. There was peace. There was a lot of peace in Africa. Africa was well managed before the advent of the colonial masters. And what happened is the colonial masters simply came, realized the riches of Africa, took over Africa, and decided to set grounds to guarantee their continuous access to the resources, the natural resources of Africa, by training African leaders for Africans, imbuing them with values that are not African, building an ideology in them where they see those foreign countries as their homeland, and it explains why you see somebody who come here rap in French or in English, and then when he's going back to England or he's going back to France, you say, I'm going back home. Why? They realize plundering Africa for these foreign countries is like doing good to your home country. You find a Cameroonian will stand and say, I'm British. How are you British? And then there is a military intervention in Africa, and you see African sons and daughters who are in the military in these foreign countries, they happily arm themselves and they come to bombard the area in the name of restoring democracy. Africa's problem, democracy is Africa's problem. I will still always continue to say it. And the sooner Africans realize that
so you are saying now to go back to the kingship.
Simply casting votes does not make a country democratic. Putting a vote in the ballot box doesn't make for democracy, because in every group, be it even in the traditional council, people still decide, you may call it democratically, whether by hand show or something. Those are still methods of taking decisions that would agree to the will of the people. We should not hide behind the word democracy. I always call it a crazy demon crazy, because it is just there to ruin Africa. And the earlier the members of CEMAC, the earlier they realize that staying quiet while ECOWAS is struggling to do what they are doing is cooperation. They say,
yes.
They say silence in the face of injustice is cooperation. You validate it when you watch it happen and you do nothing. The voices of everyone would count in this particular issue.
Okay.
And Africa should watch out. To support ECOWAS to go fight in Niger is going to instill a war in Africa. And before we open our eyes, we realize that the very people we're struggling to kick out, the very people these cool leaders are struggling to kick out so that the place can become better than it has been before, they're going to come in and set their feet stamped on the floor better than the situation now.
Okay.
And I think this war is just an excuse to have these guys come back and lay their foundation stronger than.
So the war is a green light to come back to re-establish neo-colonialism in a different form.
Definitely. Those guys are going to come, and when they come, they will not come from a distance like they did before. If we are not careful, they may come and begin to even put their own leaders on the ground.
By force by ECOWAS can never stop Niger to achieve their goal. Major from Bavmeng, this Max from Germany. Max, happy Sunday to you. Hope you are doing well, and hope your family also is doing well. And happy Sunday to you. Max from Germany, right? Colonel Gaddafi was surrounded by young people in his government as well as in the military. Macron was smart to gather African youth to sit and talk about the future. I want to thank all African leaders that are not working hand in glove with the youth have to fall to change for the good of their own people. Thank you very much, Max. This one right, it says I am very happy and at the same time sad about what is happening in Niger. Happy because it is military who did the coup. Worst of all, a close person to the president, and he knows better the state of the country. I am sad because at the end of all this, it is the grass, meaning the innocent civilian, who will pay with their blood. This other one, right, it says, hello, panel, and happy, hello, panel. Good afternoon. Just to say that one thing will always lead to another. The military coup has never been and will never be a solution to the people's plight. But let those in Africa, in the name of civilian presidents who know the changing the original constitution of their country amounts to a constitutional coup. This will lead to general military coup. Shame on Ecowas, starting with Senegal AR. My anonymous sender. Good afternoon, Mr. Jarvis, and to all panelists. French and the Western world are manipulating ECOWAS to intervene militarily in Niger. Africans ought to be fighting for their liberation, and we have a common enemy who is the Western nations. Just like a look of a coup in Niger, because it encouraged the interests of the French, mainly because of Ukraine and France has gathered the entire support of Western world under the pretext of democracy. Sanction Niger. I heard of Canada's sanction. EU and America. These people have a common enemy. Once either of them, their interest is encouraged to come to think of this. This is any democratic government in Saudi Arabia to come to think of this. Is there any democratic government in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar? Is America not trading with them? It is really shameful to see that Africans till date are still having problems. What happened to ECOWAS, what's happening within ECOWAS is just a clear evidence that these countries are led by Western puppets. No wonder Tinubu won election easily. These countries never came together to fight Boko Haram, nor did they come together to castigate the unlawful constitutional changes. ECOWAS is unlawful. ECOWAS is dependent on French military stations in Niger, without which they are toothless bulldog. As it stands, ECOWAS is divided on this issue, and most likely no intervention is gonna take place unless it is Senegal, Ivory Coast, Togo, and Benin. Shakili watching from Jakiri. Nick, how do we now get to understand the play factor here when you have Article 5 has been evoked by Burkina Faso, Mali, that a touch of Niger is a touch of all? How did we get there?
We got there because of the impunity that has been happening in ECOWAS. You see that ECOWAS is kind of playing by the hypocrisy role. When Alpha Conde of Guinea, when he wanted to go in for the third term, and the Guinean people, they refused. We never heard of ECOWAS condemning him or trying to carry out a constitutional coup d'etat. But when the military took over or took him out of the stage, ECOWAS came out, make noise. Same thing in Mali, same thing in Burkina Faso. And as I said earlier, the action of ECOWAS is just the action of few member states that are doing that. It's not the whole of ECOWAS that is actually doing that. It's just Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, maybe Benin. The other people are not with them. If he's even listening to the president of Liberia, Charles Taylor, Charles Taylor was telling the rest of the ECOWAS president that they cannot continue to support constitutional coup d'etat, and when military coup d'etat come up, they kind of condemn it, that it is hypocrisy. And I think they are not for it. Liberia, Ghana, and Sierra Leone, they are not in support of ECOWAS intervening in Niger. You will see that they suppose, if you study those who are clamoring for military takeover or intervention in Niger, you look at the way they came to power. Look at Alassane Ouattara, the way he came to power. He came to power through a coup d'etat also. He used the French military to take Gbagbo out of power, and they installed him there. And he has been there for more than 10 years now. If you look at Tinubu, which his presidency is still questioned, because they are saying the court is here to decide on election petition, which they may see invalidate his election. And if you look at him
coming to power in violation of the constitution, because the constitution electoral act says that you have to win 25% of FCT, that's the federal capital. He did not win that, and that's the court is still judging that. And if you look at it critically, it's as if he has some dirty files with the Americans. He has been accused of a drug and so on, drug laundering, and it's a kind of dirty file. When the West, they put this kind of leaders so that you can play to their bidding, so that if you don't play to their bidding, they'll invoke this dirty, they'll dig these dirty files and then bring you problems. So if you look at maybe Tinubu acting in that way, he's not acting maybe according to his own will, he's maybe under pressure.
But how do you say under pressure when he himself, when he was the day he was elected as Ecowas chairperson, won against coup d'etat?
Pardon? I don't.
He himself, they was made. How do you say that he's working under pressure when he himself, he was made president of chairperson of Ecowas that same day as in his opening speech as chairperson of Ecowas, won against coup d'etat?
Obviously, we're not surprised by his outing. We cannot be surprised with what Tinubu says, because to many Nigerians is still kind of illegitimate because his election was not free and fair. We are saying that, and I am seeing on the path that Ecowas, they cannot intervene, because the so-called intervention or supposed intervention by Ecowas, in a nutshell, if you look at it critically, it is an intervention of NATO. Look at it critically, it's an intervention of NATO. France want to hide behind that. The US have to hide behind that and say ECOWAS intervening, but in the nutshell, they will be the ones. NATO will be the one inside. The US has 2 military bases in Niger. We don't forget that. The French also have troops. Yeah, the French also have a military base there. So their interest, they see that their interest is at stake, and maybe they want to, in another way, they want to kind of use a military intervention to send a strong message to other African nations that assist me up, because after Niger there will still be another country that will see take out some French stooges out of power. It will not be, because it is a kind of continuous crusade that's happening, and it is a wind of change that's is happening. And as we were talking about this topic in connection with CEMAC, the CEMAC countries are silent because they are not, they are suffering from the same sickness also. They are just observing and looking for strategies in order that before these things happen to them, they should find a way out of it in order to block it for it not to happen to them. If you look at during the Arab Spring that was happening in the Maghrebian region, in the CEMAC region, most of the presidents strategized so that it should not come down south. Like in Cameroon, we saw the recruitment of supposed 25,000 youth into the public service. That was one of.
Why is it supposed? What do you mean?
Because up to today, most of them don't have salaries.
No, they have salaries. They have salaries.
Yeah, because that was one of the measures that was used to deviate the youth from thinking of a possible change. Of course, we know that change is something that's inevitable. You cannot, the French hegemony cannot be there forever. There has to be a time when they will give way for Africans to develop themselves. There have to be a time when they give us respect, because to them they are not taking us. They look at us as subhumans. That's why they do what they do with all impunity.
We'll take on some messages. Those of you watching us on social media platform, on our Facebook page, Abong with Wineta says CEMAC zone is not saying anything because they don't want to get infected by coup. But we are not talking about the coup. We are looking at the effect. Because if you look at the job, we are in the same ECAS. You look at ECAS in itself. The members that make ECAS, that regional block, not sub-regional block, but the regional block. In the north, we have Cameroon is bordered with Nigeria. Also, look at Chad, look at all those areas, which means that there will be effect. But Kimbang, there's been a lot of talk here that the Western influence. Let's come now to context here. 60 years after independence, should we still blame the Western again, even in what is happening? So, we want to say that President Bazoum and all the other presidents, like Ibrahim Keita that was deposed, like Rigma Kabore that was deposed in Equatorial Guinea. When we look at also the one Alpha Conde that was deposed, can we say that they cannot take an independent decision as Gaddafi took? Look at Kagame. Kagame took that decision. Look at of blessed memory, the man of Tanzania, John Pombe Magufuli. He took an independent decision. Should we still blame the West with embezzlement of money, Roadcon network? I saw an interview where Emmanuel Macron was mocking Rigma Kabore. Kabore walked out of the press conference where he was talking about electricity. Where they asked him about electricity, he said, but should we come and solve the problem of electricity in Burkina Faso? There is a problem of Kabore. Kabore walked out of the press conference. Now my question to you is, should we blame the West? People embezzle money. Should we still blame the West?
Jarvis, sincerely, we still have to blame the West. Because when you look at, it's just like we say in our dialect, you give somebody the goat, then you hold the rope. If you look at most of these African presidents that are in power, if they are not backed by the Western world, they will not be there. Now, during campaigns, you hear that Tinubu has gone to America to go and rest. Why can he not come to Cameroon and rest? Why can he not go to South Africa and rest? Why is he going only to America? He goes to America, he goes to France. And when he goes there, what happened? He discusses with them and tells them what they will benefit if he becomes the president. As soon as he reaches the elections and declares himself president, they start pouring motion of support from these countries. And when motion of support started coming from these countries, those of us who were thinking that we could maybe rise up, we said, no, America has already supported him, so we cannot do anything. Then when you look at most of these countries, when we talk about Gaddafi, what I've learned from the West, from mostly those in Europe, is that the European leaders, is that if a nation is if an African leader is a dictator and his people are suffering, they will praise him. He's a good leader. But if he's a dictator and his people are enjoying, they say no.
We need democracy.
Yeah, we need democracy. You know, we quoted the example of Paul Kagame. If Paul Kagame had not been a strong man, he would not be there, because he had had criticism from the Western world that he is a dictator, he's not supposed to be in power for this long, and so on and so forth. Yes, even all this. Yes. So it's as if when we suffer, we the Africans, once we are suffering, they're enjoying.
But you said we should blame the West. Let me come now to context. Let me zoom to Cameroon. The roads network that we have in Africa, in Cameroon, we have billions being embezzled by ministers.
Yes.
These are money given by the state to construct roads or projects. Billions being embezzled. Is it France, Emmanuel Macron, that told these ministers to embezzle? Is it Emmanuel Macron that told these road construction companies not to construct roads? Look at Douala. Douala itself is massively dirty.
Yes.
In fact, terribly dirty.
Yes,
because go to major carrefours, people just dump dirt right at Bonamusadi. When you are entering Bonamusadi, at the main entrance to Bonamusadi, a leisure center has been constructed there. But instead, people have taken that part of that leisure center to be dumping dirt. In fact, it's beside the road. Come to Kotoye, driving down to Fengu Dombange. Should we blame the West?
I think we Cameroonians or Africans, we have the share of the blame. I think 80% of the blame should go to us. You look at most of these people that are ministers, they have been trained in Europe. Most of them, they say they are coming from Europe.
They have European
European citizenship. And most of them, they don't care, because when you look at many of them, they already bought houses in Europe. And their children are there. Yes. Wait, do you know that they still? Yes. I was working with one friend who told me that she was in Switzerland, and one woman in Switzerland said she wants to come to Cameroon. The woman asked her, why do you want to come and live and work in Cameroon? She said, no, there's a lot of money in Cameroon. The woman asked why? Because the amount of money that Cameroonians have stockpiled in banks in Switzerland shows that we have money here. So these Western nations, they don't have our interest. That's why they are forcing homosexuality on us. They force things that will not benefit us. That's the thing that they want us to do. Why is that they're not forcing us to do technology? They're not forcing on to things that can give us independence. They're say forcing on things that is going to dehumanize us.
Let me take on some messages. Good morning, my media partner. I think we Africans should be happy with coup leaders in Niger for sending a message to the European Union that they can't continue manipulating us just in the name of democracy through our own corrupt leaders. Africans are capable of managing our own affairs. Yusuf from Ghana. This one says, my brothers, it is just selected group of blood drinking that we have never condemned anyone who changes the constitution to stay in power. They call it democracy. Blessed proprietor president like them. As the beggars, France, they are quick to take away their citizens but leaving their own army. France are quick to take away their citizens but leaving their own army. Their plans will fail big time. Macron will go down carrying with him all his disciples in French Africa. In Joshua writing, this one right, he says, Balkin from Douala. Good afternoon to you all in the panel. Very interesting topic. The word democracy is deliberately attempted by the West to dominate and suppress Africa and the world. Hitler, Charles de Gaulle, Stanley Franco, Mao Zedong, etc. were never Democrats, but they all fought to develop their various nations. Democracy is not found in any country in the world. Will never work in Africa. How can Cameroon in 2023 call himself a British Southern Cameroon? What a shame. We sell negative image out to the world, our nation, calling foreigners to come and help us. When they eventually come to impose their system on us, we start crying again. When will the African man learn? Any attempt by Ecowas to destabilize Niger will be the biggest mistake in the sub-region. Blinken writing from Douala. This one right, Niger is one of the highest producers of uranium and yet do not have electricity. It all exported to nations we all know. All Nigerian heads of states have all wanted to change this, have been booted out. Who have ever wanted to change have been booted out. The reason they are so mad at this particular coup is because they are not the one behind it. CEMAC countries have constitutional coup plotters everywhere in Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Central African Republic, Chad are all coup plotters. He who seek equity must go with clean hands. Mr. Jarvis, African leaders must work for the interests of the West, especially those democratically elected leaders. I got information that the Niger military were going after the terrorists in the Sahel region, and they were called by Niger president to stop going after the terrorists because of instruction from France. Mr. Jarvis, the greatest threat of the Western nation is in Africa. Is Russia. The greatest threat to Western nations in Africa is Russia. Your message is gotten.
Yeah, my
briefly,
in this issue of forcing relationship with Africa. Niger said we don't want you to be our friend. You say no, you must be our friend. How do you do force?
Yes, France has refused to cut ties.
Yes, I don't want to be your friend. Why are you forcing yourself to be my friend? So I think the French people, they know what they are benefiting from Africa, and I think the time has come for African youth to rise up and say enough is enough.
We are almost out of time. Where do we go from here? If we look at this situation, what is Cameroon in itself thinking when we are looking at what is happening of a possible humanitarian crisis? Sadly, CEMAC has not still made a statement.
Our fear here, first of all, is that we have some different from those other. In CEMAC, is hereditary. There's another one going on in CEMAC, which is not really clear, but it is coming up clear. But the way forward, as you said, I want to say that if you support evil, evil will consume you. What is happening in Africa is because they accept certain conditions. If you are becoming a leader, then a Western country is giving you conditions that you know that are going to affect your country. You accept the conditions because you only want to be in power. Then you know that in the future you are going to face the consequences of the evil you are supporting. I want to support what Mr. Kimbang said here. The Western power is responsible for our underdevelopment, because I don't know whether is it normal for a country to have a military base in another country, and then they can stay silent and pretend, but it is very clear. Let me take a case study in Cameroon. In Cameroon, when election is coming, and then a group, a particular village, they write emotional support to President Paul Biya, you, a leader of that area who is also from another village, if you don't gather your own people to write motions of support to President Paul Biya, automatically nobody will talk to you, but you are already taking note of as somebody who is against the president of the republic. You will be forced to write emotional support to the president. That's the way African leaders they function. The Western powers, they are responsible for our underdevelopment because they pretend as if they don't influence us, but they stay quiet.
We're out of time.
Yeah, they stay quiet for us to, yes.
What should be the way forward?
The way forward is that the deliverance of Africa is a hand. If you like, in the Bible, when the children of Israel were delivered from the captivity of Babylon, if you read the Bible, the psalmist presented it was like they were dreaming. And to me, Africa is like we are dreaming of this change, because some years back we could not like see any African country that could talk back at France or the West, but today we are seeing that happening, and we are praying that these things should continue and for the complete deliverance of Africa, especially in Central Africa, where we had a plan of father-son succession in place, and it's as if it has been happening. It started in Gabon, moved to Chad, and the other, if you look at the other SEMA countries, Congo is in preparation, Equatorial Guinea in preparation, Cameroon in preparation, and we're praying that this kind of things should not happen. This wind of change should blow also in Central Africa so that our people can be free. Many Cameroonians die in the Sahara Desert, in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Amazon rainforest in the Brazil, and to move to the US and Europe.
Yeah,
and
are you calling for a coup?
I'm not the one to call for a coup d'etat.
All are hoping that this kind of thing that's been greatly condemned in Niger should happen in Semak.
This thing, the one of Niger was not called by any citizen. It just happened. No, my statement does not imply that who am I to call for a coup? I'm not a military person.
Yes, but that's your statement. We are praying. If
I told the coup, it is going to, because there are different categories of coup d'etat. Most Central African states are living on permanent constitutional coup d'etats. That's permanent constitutional coup d'etats they are living on. And it is the role of the military of Cameroon is they are very intelligent people. They are very sensitive. And they are reading between the lines, and
you may Yaoundé to panic.
Wow.
They're very intelligent. They know what to do.
You may Yaoundé to panic.
I think there is an awakening in Africa, and it's time for the youth to take back what belongs to them. That issue of saying that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, and you grow old and you die, you are never a leader of tomorrow. I think if there are no military coup, the youth should carry on their coup through massive registration in the voters' registration, and they vote, and they make sure that they support their vote, they guide their vote, and make sure that democracy takes place. Because when we are talking of coup, yes, very sweet, but what is the consequence of the coup d'etat? It has far-reaching effects too. So I think that it's not something we should encourage, but the leaders of Africa, Cameroon inclusive, they should know that most of the youths, they are not happy. Thank you.
Goya, last word.
Okay, I would say if the coup d'etats are what it takes to make Africa great again, so should it be. And I think it's high time African youths, stand up, like Mr. Vitalis is saying, and carry on electoral coup d'etats. Because if we register massively and put who we want to be there in the place, it will be good. But I think we will not go anywhere if we keep reinstating or putting Western trained leaders in place in the African continent. We need to take raw leaders from Africa, those who have lived the sufferings of Africa from the starting to be our leaders. Those are the only people who can lead us well, because those we pick from outside because they have studied in France, they have studied in the US, they have studied in this. They bring the mentality of our own enemies and make us miserable in our own countries with those. So it's high time Africa takes homegrown citizens, patriots, and put them in place so that they can be able to make Africa great.
Thank you very much, all those of you who participated, those of you who have sent us your messages. We want to also say thank you to you who have sent your messages. Your messages have been gotten, especially this one who have been Gideon Tangu, who says President Tinubu claims that he cannot tolerate military junta in Ecowas state, but tolerate terrorists kidnapping little Nigerian girls. If you cannot protect the children in Nigeria, then why should you want to invade Niger? No, sir, my brother there is nothing calling for a coup d'etat, but he's just saying that the French and their squad in Africa should know that the matter is becoming contagious. It started in Mali and today in Niger. That message is coming from Joshua. Now this program comes to you every Sunday at exactly 12. I want to seize the opportunity to say thank you to the producer Desmond, and also to those who are working on this program, because it's not been an easy task to brave the rain to come and produce this program, and also the guests who have attended this program. Douala has been quite rainy. I want to also wish you a happy Sunday to you, Mr. Nyam Robert, and the wife, Madam Nyam Juan from the United States of America. That also to you in Germany, Max in Germany, I want to wish you a happy Sunday to you. This program will be rebroadcast at exactly 10:30 p.m. If you want to be a panelist to the program, you want to take part in the political debate of this program, you can contact me on the numbers that you see on your screen. I will include you into our WhatsApp group. When the topic comes that is of your interest, you will participate. You can also participate via Skype. You can also participate wherever you are, even out of Cameroon. I'll leave you with this: no matter the matter, what matters is your matter. And what should matter for you is that you should know that the truth is God, and you can only kill the teller and not the truth. He who goes to equity must go with clean hands. That's my message to Nigeria President Bola Ahmed Asuwaju Tinubu. My name is Tah Mai Jarvis on Cameroon's political capital Douala, economic capital Douala. Bye bye.